Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to AustCham Thailand's webinar on handy tips for online learning and homeschooling. As we're now another month into homeschooling, we understand that while, of course, parents enjoy spending more time with their kids, they also, I think, are really appreciating the great work that teachers and staff do at our schools. For this webinar, we welcome AustCham bronze sponsor, King's College International School, Bangkok. And our speaker today is Deputy Head of Pre-Prep, Mr. Raj Ladva. Raj, how are you?
Hi, I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Excellent. So Raj, I believe that our members are telling us there's a lot of challenges with homeschooling. I'm sure you would know all about that and have lots of handy tips for us.
Yeah, so today I'm going to share with you some of the lessons that we've learned, not only as educators, but also from listening to our parent body. I've gone through, this is our third time through, and actually learning from teachers, not only from Bangkok, but people who've come here from other parts of the world, so from China, from New Zealand, from Australia, who've also had lots of good strategies to share with us. So I'm just going to take you all through some things that we've learnt, split up into 6 sections, and then some questions at the end if you've got anything you'd like to clarify. I'm going to try and do it as best as I can from not only the classroom teacher's angle, but from the position of the school, but also from the position of the parent as well. So that hopefully there should be something for everyone.
Excellent. Well, I'll let you share your screen and take over. Over to you, Raj.
So hello everyone. To start with today, I'm going to share with you a video that highlights the success of our own home learning strategy that took place in January. And we were quite surprised and quite proud, I think, of the impact that the home learning strategy had. So please do enjoy this, it's not very long.
How do you think the wolf feels now? He was really angry.
A really fun dance.
It was going to be the best one ever.
Just some highlights there really of our first round of online learning, and I can safely say that a lot of the strategies that we used then are the same strategies that we're using now. And I hope that the thing that you really took away from watching that is the level of connection that our teachers and our students have with one another during this period of time. And actually, that is the thing that everybody misses. We miss connection with our friends, with our family. And if we're really looking at educating children via this medium, then we need to really ensure that we are establishing connection. And that really means first and foremost that they got an opportunity to talk to their peers and their teachers in a way that's not necessarily learning related, but being able to connect virtually in a meet space is really, really beneficial. They should really be able to share what they're learning. So if you've set a project or they're doing independent learning tasks at home, there should be an opportunity for them to be able to share what they're doing, not only with their teacher, but with their friends as well, and with the wider community. And I think finding opportunities that you can build in that sharing and allowing everyone to be part of that really creates a sense of community that people are really missing at the moment. So that's a really key factor, I think, in making sure that people feel part of a school and not just on the receiving end of a lot of information. The important thing, one of the most key parts as well, is if you are setting tasks or if you are receiving tasks from a school or institution to do, you need to feel that you're getting feedback on it. So a comment from a teacher or a little voice note or anything like that, that helps people understand, oh, actually, the things that I'm doing as part of my online learning are being received, they are being receptive. And I think from both angles, that's obviously really important for the children, but also for the teachers, it's really important that they don't overwhelm themselves with too much feedback. So it's about making sure that they're offering feedback in the right way. So if it's a PE video, for example, they're showing off their skills, that you're commenting in a way that's sustainable, because otherwise it can become unwieldy very quickly. So it's trying to make sure that people are receiving feedback. You want to get feedback on what you're doing, but it's also able to be sustained. One of the other key aspects that I think is really important is that we remain consistent in terms of our expectations. We can't replace school at home. We can't expect parents to be, trained teachers, but what we can hope for is that there's some elements that are consistent, and we try and create consistency or where it feels natural. So one of the things that is we found really effective is a familiar routine. So in our online learning program, they have a registration in the morning, which is a check-in with the teacher as a whole class. Then they have small group learning throughout the morning. Again, familiar routines. They might read with an assistant teacher or work with one of the support staff. They'll have lessons in the morning, and they have a predictable timetable throughout the week that's set by the teacher and all the support staff. So they'll still have their Mandarin lessons, their music lessons, and everything is very familiar in that respect. It's the same teachers, it's in a format that they know, and that everyone knows what the timetable is. This is when lunch is, this is when your break is, this is when you might do your PE activity to have a bit of a break. So it's trying to make sure that that's built in so that everyone understands, oh, okay, it's a school day and I know what I do on a school day. One of the other really important things is that we make our expectations very clear, because if there's too much room for maneuver in terms of if things can be misinterpreted, then it's really important that everyone understands, well, okay, if I've set this work, it needs to be in by the end of the week. I'd like it as a video. We need to be really clear on what it is we're hoping for the children to learn and do. And I think when the children are super young, they obviously need a lot of support from the adults around them. And as they get a bit older, then we can start to expect a bit more independence, which is obviously very, very important. The last thing really that is probably the most important thing is making sure that whatever platform you're going to use for learning, everyone knows how to use it. And I think one thing that everyone had to do in a really steep way when this first happened, 12, 15 months ago, is learning a new platform. So it could have been Google Classroom, it could have been Google Meet, it could have been Zoom, it could have been hundreds of different platforms. And actually making sure that in this day and age, certainly now, everyone's got a familiarity with a certain level of platform. So it's really important that you use familiar platforms, that when you're trying to teach people how to access learning online at home, that you're not then teaching them how to learn a new platform as well as then log into the content and then anything that you're trying to provide. So for Kings, that means that we use Google because all of the children and staff are familiar with Google and how that interface works, and using Seesaw, which again we use as part of our day-to-day life anyway. So these are two platforms that work for us, work for our community, work for our children, and everyone understands how those systems fit together. So in terms of managing children's learning, it's been quite effective in that respect, because everyone understands, oh, okay, we're going to do this on Google, we're going to do this on Seesaw, and that helps everybody stay within the understanding of how the online learning is meant to work. Environment at home is probably one of the most diverse aspects, because we generally don't have that much of a window into how people are living their lives at home. You know, lots of our families, they may be in multi-family houses, they may be in single-family condos, they may be in smaller places with both parents working online from home as well. So anything that can be done to make that environment more suitable should obviously come at the benefit of everybody. And it's really important that if we do have this space, then we can try and make it as effective as possible. Calmness is probably more achievable if, like myself, you've only got one child at home. If you've got three and everyone's on different learning timetables, then that obviously is a bit more challenging. But trying to find places where spaces can be calm is really valuable for helping the children concentrate and maintain their attention during what can be quite a challenging platform to use. A recent study came out suggesting that our cognitive load when we're using video conferencing is extremely high, much higher than it would be if we're just in the classroom with our friends and our teachers. So it can be very exhausting, and Zoom fatigue is very real. So finding ways to ensure there's a calmer space and that attention can be maximized is really important. For younger children especially, having them involved in a setup where they're going to do their learning is really valuable. Making the space feel like it belongs to them rather than that is done to them. And anyone who is a parent of a young child will know, you know, the attention span for video conferencing can be quite limited. Project-based learning, any style of learning that the young children will do has to be supported generally by the adults. So having a space that they are happy to be in is definitely half of the battle. And that might be as simple as, you know, they've got a special pencil case with little bits of things in it that they will need, or it's a new notebook, or it doesn't have to be a grand change. It just has to be something simple that they know belongs to them. And that's where their learning is going to happen when you're doing online learning. So that can be really beneficial for allowing that calm space and environment set up to work together so that they are feeling really effective. Appropriate resources. Of course, for a 4 or 5 year old, they're going to need a different kind of pair of scissors than a 13 or 14 year old. Things, generally practical resources, you will need to consider what have you got at home that's actually accessible for young children, what they're going to need help with, what can they do by themselves. And if you're a school, if you can provide those resources for your parents, that's amazing. If you're a parent, if you can find those resources at home, or if you can request them from your school, then it's just making those things a little bit easier for your child, because it's things that they're used to using, and that is definitely really valuable if you want them to be successful, rather than, again, learning something new that's something they know how to use. Sustainability is really key. You need to be able to maintain what you're doing for quite a significant period of time. Obviously, the lockdown back in January wasn't so as long as it has been in other parts of the world, and this one feels like it could be a little bit longer. So it's ensuring that whatever strategy you put into place, it can be maintained. And that's not only for the children, but also for the teachers. It's and for the school, so that we understand how parents and children are feeling. Are they feeling a bit fatigued? Do they need an off-screen day? You know, what can you put in place to ensure that people are still feeling supported but not exhausted? Because it is not a platform. This isn't how humans learn. Humans learn through face-to-face interaction, especially young children. So they're learning in a different way, which is mentally very exhausting. So how can we make sure that things are interesting and that things have been strategically placed to allow children to flourish as well as be supported. Rest time is a really key part. So at King's, we've structured our timetable. So a lot of the teacher-child interaction, direct face-to-face learning happens in the morning. So it will happen between 8 o'clock and about 11:30, 12 o'clock. And in the afternoon, the learning becomes much more project-based and actually can be much more flexible for the children at home, for the carers at home. If they, if you want to go out for a bike ride at 2 o'clock after your lunch, or if you want to go and do something slightly different because actually the learning has been really challenging today, then having that flexibility in your schedule helps everybody. Now there's structure for the morning when generally people are a bit busier anyway. Mum and dad might be working from home, the children are busy with their tasks, they're talking to their teacher, so that's really involved. And then in the afternoon, when there might be a little bit more time in the day, that there's a little bit of flexibility in terms of when you might do the music project, when you might do the art project, when you might do your English challenge, and just making sure that everyone understands that rest is important. You can't be on Zoom 9 hours a day. It's not good for the learning. And just like I said before, it's maintaining that balance between on-screen time and off-screen time. And there are lots of different recommendations, lots of different studies that come out, but essentially you can tell when you're tired of looking at a camera, you can tell when you're tired of looking at a screen, and it's about managing that for your individual preferences and for your children too. I touched on resourcing briefly earlier, but I think resourcing is something, again, that's very different, very variable, depending on the school that you're in or the school that your children go to. But essentially, keeping it simple is probably the most important thing. Certainly the first time round last year, we really tried hard to only think of resource implications that children and parents could find around the house, which is actually quite effective and can be quite creative. And most things, if you Google them, you can always find an alternative. Like, how do I make a spinner, for example, for a math game at home? Turns out a pencil and a paper clip and a little bit of card is perfect for that kind of thing. So keeping it simple is really effective. It obviously requires a little bit more thought for any kind of learning that you're going to do at home. Building on existing skills for children. So as teachers or as parents, you know what your children can do and what they're capable of. So it's really important that whichever skills they've been learning at home, if you're going to use similar lessons, or if you're going to try and continue learning, you should really build on skills. It shouldn't be a standalone or something that that doesn't relate to what the children have been learning. Otherwise, it's much more challenging for them to access. So it's really important to build on the skills that they already have, and to try and as best as you can to give an idea of where they're meant to go. Open-ended resources at home are fantastic for supporting learning, and this, by open-ended resources, I mean things like blocks or old corks or bottle tops, or things that you can use to be other things. And you might use them in a counting activity, you might use them in an art activity, you might use them in a music activity, but it's having simple items that can be easily replicated. I remember doing a counting activity with watermelon seeds during the first lockdown. So it's having things in quantity that you can use in different ways is really valuable for the children. It helps them be creative as well. Really, probably the thing that I'd like to finish on is the flexibility. And I think flexibility for each family is going to look different. And for schools, we have a responsibility to ensure that we are providing flexibility within people's schedules. So like I mentioned before, having a timetable that has time for independent projects is really valuable. That we allow children to follow their interests as well. So, if they do get really into sea creatures, well, maybe if they're really eager to learn and they're happy learning and you're able to support that learning, then support that learning. I can guarantee they're still learning valuable skills, and teachers will always be very, very interested in hearing, you know, what the children have been up to at home and how they're learning at home as well. And discovering new opportunities. You know, I've heard many anecdotal stories of people walking outside of their houses, you know, going for a private walk as a family and finding parts of their neighborhood that they've never found before. So finding those new opportunities, not even within your home, to explore different kinds of learning. It might be a history project looking at old family photos, or a Zoom call with your grandparent asking about what it was like, what life was like for them, you know, 30, 40 years ago. Anything that you can do that allows children to use existing technology, build on their skills that they're learning at school, and also finding out how to use things in different ways is really, really powerful. Now, I'd love to hear if you've got any questions. I will answer them as honestly as I can on the experience that we've had here in Bangkok, and obviously learning from the experiences from everybody else. But I'll hand over back to AustCham.
And thank you, Raj. We do have a question in already. It's from Greg Candiff from the Australian International School, Bangkok. And Greg asks, has anyone done research on how many platforms and links parents juggle with the remote learning system? So you touched on the platforms earlier. Do you have any research on how many actual platforms they're using?
Unfortunately not. I don't have any evidence. I've only got anecdotal, which is a lot. And a lot of people I know, certainly in the UK especially, you know, also in institutions that are not as well funded, you're using free apps and that kind of thing to try and facilitate learning online. There may be upwards of 8 or 10 different platforms for using. You know, if you've got a child in year 6, they might be doing something for reading on one project, they might be doing for music on another, might be on a different app, could be a different platform. So I think it's for schools to be really mindful of looking at, okay, what are we using and how are we using it? And if our parents have got a child in 3 different year groups, are they all using similar platforms, or are they all different? And is that really manageable for our families?
Thank you. We have a question from Paul O'Neill, who's from Verso. He's asked, thanks for your presentation, Raj. He's curious what the parent feedback has been, especially from the younger age clients.
We did survey all of our parents. We had 100% responses, and actually when it came to parent satisfaction, we were quite surprised to have 100% satisfaction from the survey. I should have really added the pie chart to this to this presentation so you can see I'm not making that up. But one of the things that I think parents really valued was having communication with us. We're very lucky to have quite an open feedback culture on campus, and a lot of us are extremely visible. So, you know, if there are issues, parents tell us, and we do our best to meet the need. But we've learned a lot of lessons from not only from the staff who've come from all the different places across the world who've done this in lots of different ways, but also from our own experience too. And, you know, things like a schedule, things like prioritizing children's connection with their peers, small group learning, supporting their learning at home with resources. These are all things we knew parents valued. So we figured if we did it all at once, it would be hopefully to their satisfaction.
Great. And from Karen O'Neill, do you have any recommendations around the amount of screen time throughout the school day? And if so, what research did you base it on?
Okay, that's a really good question, because I would suggest it's definitely tiered, depending on how old the age of the children is. So we've had a lot of parents basically say to us, look, our doctors have recommended that our child has less screen time, so can you please prioritize that? So what we offer, essentially screen time is one of those issues that is so divisive at the moment, and there's so much conflicting research. It's very much a parental decision. And actually, as a school, we need to say that, well, this is what we're offering. And if you've got concerns around it, then we're happy to to talk to you about it and see, you know, what you're more comfortable with. So for example, in reception, they have a registration call in the morning. It's usually 5 or 10 minutes. Then there'll be a 15-minute small group phonics lesson, then a 15-minute small group maths lesson. Then they might do a 10-minute read with an assistant teacher. So in that morning, they've had 45 minutes maybe, and then they'll have a checkout call at the end of the day. So over the course of the day, it's probably less than an hour for the reception child. And then, you know, we can build that up a little bit per year group. And so year 1 would be roughly about similar. So would year 2. And then when the children get older, obviously they become much more independent. So they may have a 30-minute English lesson in the morning, but actually 20 minutes of that was teacher instruction, 10 minutes of that was being supported to get on with it, and then half an hour of that was independent study. So it's trying to make sure that we're limiting it as much as we humanly can, while still being able to actually get across the teaching and the learning that we want to, and being able to provide the feedback. So to answer your question, I think it's much more important that schools are prepared to offer the screen time and make it efficient, and let parents decide on how much they want to access it. So for example, I've had a parent in reception say, well, actually for my child, I feel that I only really want her doing 30 minutes of screen time a day. So we said, okay, well, how about skipping the morning and afternoon registration and then come to the reading session and the math session, and that would be suitable if you're satisfied with that. And they were very happy with that. Also knowing that they're still being supported to do independent projects, they're getting feedback from the teacher, they've got resources from the school, so there's still learning happening. But the point is that we're giving an option.
This is just out of my own interest. Are there any discussions either directly with parents or in the staff room between teachers on the mixed messaging of online learning? I know growing up as a kid, our parents told us to get away from the TV screen. As it evolved into us then telling our kids get away from the iPad screen or get away from the computer game screen. Unfortunately, our hand has been forced, but we're now saying that to get in front of that screen and learn. Is that something that's talked about?
I think because of the situation that we find ourselves in, it's one of those things that we've sort of embraced as a necessity. You know, if we want to be able to continue to have impact on children's learning, then this is the medium that we have to use. I think the way in which we've adopted platforms to support other independent tasks helps us see that there are different ways of children learning, and it's up to us as the educators to ensure that we've got a balance of on-screen, off-screen, independent tasks, led tasks, stuff that they can do on their own, stuff that they might check in with a teacher or an assistant teacher about. So there is much more of a blended approach. But yeah, I think most people would agree that being sat in front of a screen teaching for 8 hours a day is nothing that anybody, you wouldn't want it for the children, you certainly wouldn't want it for the teachers.
No, indeed. And I did like your comment about getting out for a bike ride or something after lunch. I think that applies not only to students, but teachers and myself, everyone who's working from home, just to make sure you get some exercise or something a bit different during the day. We have a question from Rajiv Parab, our member up at Ubon Ratchathani, also comments, great presentation, and he would like to know, are there any key differences in online learning between older and younger children? So maybe your middle school down to your pre-prep that you're working with.
I would say yes, the program looks different depending on where the child is in the school. There are some structural similarities. So everyone gets screen time. So everybody gets interaction with their teacher. Everybody gets some reading time. Everybody gets a registration call. Everybody gets a checkout call at the end of the day, or a story time, for example, for nursery. How it differs would be in the amount of independent work that we set and what we expect from the independent work. So, for example, we won't be asking a 3- and 4-year-old to write a story, but we might ask them to make a junk modelling, make a model of a cow or a dog, using some skills that we've shown them. But whereas in Key Stage 2, so if your child is, age 10 or 11, you would be expecting a written story and something that you could read and then feedback on. So I think the important thing is that as a school, you agree which structures are going to be the same. So for us, it's making sure they get small group learning, making sure they have a checkout call, all of those things. The things that are different is okay, what are the children learning independently or with support from home?
Great. So we'll make this our final question. Once we move past the pandemic, it is inevitable that we will move past it eventually, and we hope sooner rather than later. How do you see, what lessons have you learnt that will make the new normal for the learning experience at King's?
I think the thing that we all miss is the children. And I think for everybody in education, you will really value those moments and that time that we get in class. And I think, you know, for my own self, you know, I'm still in the classroom, and I'll still be teaching a lot next year. It's really valuing those moments and making sure that we make every interaction count, because, you know, I haven't seen my class for a significant period of this year, and that really does make a difference to not only them as learners, but also me as a teacher. So it's making sure that in the future, when we do get to a new normal, that it gives me a new appreciation for the time I get to spend with them.
Do you think from an office point of view, there is talk, and there was this time last year, that we would be able to spend a lot more time at home? Do we need to go to the office from 9 to 5 every day? Could we work a lot more at home? That kind of blended lifestyle. Do you see that happening at schools? Will there be a time when students are going half the time and doing some learning at home?
I don't think so, mainly because I think what schools are a community, and first and foremost, you know, when we talk about connection, that's where our connection comes from, and that's the thing that, you know, is really, we're growing that community at King's. And in all schools everywhere, you know, wherever your child goes to school, that's the thing that you buy into. That's the thing that makes you go there. And I think taking away that level of human interaction, that sense of belonging, while there may be advantages for older students, certainly, you know, 16, 17, 18, if you want to do a work placement and do your study at the same time, that can probably work for you as a blended approach to learning. But that's because you're nearly at that point in your life anyway. But for our youngest children, 3, 4, 5 years old, you know, they get a sense of community coming to school, and I don't think that's ever going to change.
That's a good answer, Raj. I like the answer, because AustCham is also a community, and while me personally, I'm spending a lot of time on the phone and online calls talking with people, just chomping at the bit to get back to meeting our members in person. And for that exact same reason, it's a community and it needs it. Raj, I think we're out of time. So I'd like to say thank you for joining us. Thank you to King's College International School, Bangkok, for allowing you to have the time as well and sharing your insights. I know it's been very valuable to our attendees.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for having me. And it was, I really enjoyed my experience. So thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone.